Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the Gambian army chiefs amongst those taking to the streets in celebration over the inauguration of President Adama Barrow. The Senegalese armies entered Gambia in a show of force as former leader Yahya Jammeh refuses to step aside. Meanwhile, international and regional pressure on Jammeh mounts. The UN Security Council passes a resolution in support of regional efforts to get him to respect the expiration of his mandate. And we head to Kenya, where public services face more disruption as medical students and university professors join strikes that have seen doctors down tool for over a month. But first, it's been a busy day for Gambia, but not necessarily in the country itself. New leader Adama Barrow was inaugurated in his embassy in Senegal, and shortly afterwards, Senegalese troops entered Gambia as a warning to former leader Yahya Jammeh, who's refused to leave the State House. The show of force came on the heels of a UN Security Council resolution that backed the new president and efforts from the regional bloc ECOWAS to get Jammeh to step aside.
Gambia's citizens did not get to witness one of the most democratic transitions in their country firsthand. It was a muted inauguration in Gambia's embassy in neighbouring Senegal on Thursday. After the ceremony, President Adama Barrow tried to garner support from the country's armed forces in a standoff with longtime leader Yahya Jammeh.
I command the Chief of the Defence Staff and other officers of High Command to demonstrate their loyalty to me as their Commander-in-Chief, without any delay.
Jammeh's mandate officially ended at midnight local time. Gambia's been in a state of confusion since he refused to cede power after losing December's presidential election. He then turned to the courts and parliament to try to extend his 22-year rule. The country is now in flux. Senegal has confirmed it sent troops to uphold the election results. It's acting as part of West African bloc ECOWAS, which urged Jammeh to leave peacefully. These efforts are backed by the UN Security Council. In Gambia, tensions are high, though the streets are still quiet. Businesses closed, buses empty. After Jammeh declared a state of emergency on Tuesday, many feared violence. Tens of thousands have fled the country.
Well, our correspondent, Katerina Hoya, is in Banjul. She joins us now for a bit of a flavour of how things are feeling there. Katerina, we've been hearing that there have been some celebrations in the capital upon news of Barrow's inaugurations. Do many Gambians think that the end is in sight?
Well, when Adama Barrow was inaugurated as Gambia's new president in Dakar, celebrations broke out in Banjul. Now, this is a town where people have been staying inside for days. Even we have seen thousands of people fleeing, afraid of what was going to happen on the 19th when this transfer of power would take place. We saw police and soldiers celebrating together with the population. Even the Army Chief of Staff, Usman Badje, was seen celebrating in the streets. And this comes, of course, at the same time as we know that Senegalese troops have crossed the border into Gambia, supported by troops from Nigeria and Ghana, and heading towards the capital to possibly by force try to convince Yahya Jammeh to step down. According to information that we have, the troops entered through the village of Farafani, close to the border, and entered to Gambia's second largest military camp, where they were met with no resistance and are, according to information, continuing towards the capital.
So the head of the Gambian armies in the streets in celebration at Barrow's inauguration. The Senegalese troops have crossed over into Gambia. The odds seem to be stacked against him. Where is he? Does he have any support or means to realistically try to even hang in there for much longer?
Yahya Jammeh has not been seen or heard of since yesterday when his mandate expired. He was supposed to step down. Over the last days, he has moved to enforce a state of emergency and also convinced the National Assembly to extend his mandate by 3 months. Now, this seems to matter very little since Adama Barrow has actually been sworn in. Jammeh, who is a military man, long enjoyed the support from the army and this support has faded. Now he's possibly only backed by the presidential guard, if even. And after what we've seen, the celebrations here in town, we actually went into the quarters where the presidential palace is, downtown where the government buildings are, and there was a completely different pictures, airy streets, no people around, and a couple of checkpoints on the way up towards the presidential palace. I would say that Jammeh has very little means to stay on at the moment and very little support, at least in the capital.
Thanks very much, Katerina Hoye, there for us. Now, the African Union has also made it clear that it no longer recognises Jammeh's authority now that his mandate is over. In general, he's faced strong international pressure to stand down from all sides, bearing in mind the UN Security Council's resolution on Thursday in support of ECOWAS regional efforts to get him to accept the fact that Adama Barrow is now president. So for more on this, we're joined now by Riza Kazan. She's in New York. Riza, how important was the UN's resolution in the overall scheme of things? Russia was actually very clear that it didn't authorize military action in the Gambia. So what does it mean?
Exactly, yes. Well, it is not a full-scale authorization of military force, of the use of military force in the Gambia by any means. And that's indeed what Russia stressed repeatedly before. And actually, the initial text, the initial draft of the resolution stated that it wanted the support of the United Nations Security Council for the ECOWAS to take all necessary measures to respect the will of the Gambian people. But that language was changed. It was softened to win that unanimous support of all 15 members of the United Nations Security Council. So now the resolution states that it supports ECOWAS and its commitment to respect the will of the Gambian people by political means first. So that is quite important. So although this is not a full-scale authorization of military use of force. And this is what United Nations officials also stressed after the vote, that they want a peaceful transition and they want this crisis to be resolved peacefully. It does send an important signal. It does send an important message that the international community is united in supporting Adama Barrow as the next president, the legitimate president of the Gambia. And it does condemn the former president, as it calls him in the resolution, Jammeh. It does condemn him in his attempts to usurp the will of the Gambian people, and it calls on him to ensure this peaceful transition and step aside.
Thanks very much, Riza Kazan, there for us in New York. Well, in other news, Kenyan university lecturers started an indefinite strike on Thursday over poor pay. They're joining a 5-week walkout by doctors. The country's public services are under pressure and discontent is deepening on several fronts.
Urging the government to tackle the country's ongoing health crisis. Dozens of medical students joined Kenya's nationwide doctors' strike on Thursday, staging a protest outside Nairobi's Ministry of Education.
It's actually a national crisis, but the government is not treating it as so, and we want them to come to action right now.
We are demonstrating because we have not been learning for the past few weeks since we opened school. The doctors are on strike, and the government has not done enough in order to reinstate them to the hospitals so that we can continue their learning process.
Kenya's state doctors have been on strike since December 5th. They're demanding a tripling of their salaries and better working conditions. They say the pay raise is part of an agreement signed in 2013, a deal Kenyan officials argue isn't legally binding. Medical unions recently rejected a government offer to raise salaries by 40% and said they would continue the strike until their demands were fully met. Authorities issued an ultimatum last week, warning that striking doctors would get fired and union officials arrested if they didn't go back to work. Yet protesters are so far still refusing to back down. Kenya's longest ever medical strike has left millions without access to health care in a country where there is only one doctor for every 17,000 patients.
Well, that's it for In Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.
Because a new page of history gets written every day. Because breaking news can't wait. Information. Everywhere. In all situations. On every subject. Understanding the world. Imagining the world. France 24, a different take on the news.